The second part of this talk deals now, we're pointing toward Oslo and Stockholm, of course, and the Nobel Prizes that were set up by the will of Alfred Nobel. The inventor of dynamite, a weapon of mass destruction, created the world's most prestigious peace prize. You can't make this stuff up. It's better than fiction. So who was Alfred Nobel? In 1888, his brother, Ludwig, died in France, and a French newspaper, mistakenly thinking it was Alfred who died, rather than Ludwig, his brother, published an obituary. And the obituary read in part, Dr. Alfred Nobel, who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before, died yesterday. The merchant of death is dead. How would you like to read that in your obituary? The merchant of death, he was haunted by that phrase and shaken by the obituary. So how many people get to read their own obituary, and especially when people are thinking ill of you? So he was dismayed because his invention did get into warfare and did indeed kill great numbers of people. And he wanted to make amends. He had this great fortune. What could he do with it? And so he was conceiving a plan that would result in the greatest benefit on mankind, he said. So the inventor of dynamite established the Nobel Peace Prize and others as well. And these are given on December 10th of each year, the anniversary of his death, in Oslo and in Stockholm. Peace Prize in Oslo, of course, the others in Stockholm. And the exact language in his will, this is Gandhi, of course, in the picture on the screen. I'll talk more about him in a minute. But the exact language in his will is the Peace Prize should be awarded to the person who shall have done the most or the best work for fraternity between nations, for the abolition or reduction of standing armies, and for the holding and promotion of peace congresses. Did I just skip a slide? No, I'm okay, I think. So as I mentioned, the Peace Prize in Oslo, the others in Stockholm in December of each year. The ones given in Stockholm are physics, chemistry, and then there's one called physiology or medicine. That's one. Physiology or medicine is one prize. And then literature. And you may be aware also that there is an economics prize that was added in 1968 that is not a part of Nobel's will at all. So these are given in the Stockholm Concert Hall, and the banquet, the glorious banquet, is held in the Blue Room of City Hall. So if you're out on a tour in Stockholm, by all means, I hope it will stop at City Hall, because it's the so-called Blue Room, which is not blue at all, is a magnificent room, and you will be in the shadow of greatness once again, because that's where the Nobel laureates of everything but the Peace Prize meet every December 10th in the evening for their grand banquet. Where did I go? I think I skipped something. Perfect, okay. He called himself the loneliest man in the world. This chemist, this engineer, this inventor said that he felt lonely. He was the son of a businessman, an entrepreneur, and inventor who became a businessman, entrepreneur, and inventor. He never married. He had no heirs. He wrote poetry and novels, and he was incredibly rich from 335 different inventions with a number of companies in 3 or 4 or 5 different countries. So how could he erase this stigma of being called the merchant of death? Well, this is from a biography of Nobel. 10 days after his mother's death in Copenhagen, in December of 1889, he took a lonely walk through the Strøya, I hope you got there, Copenhagen shopping area. It was snowing, and he bundled up against the cold. He paused to touch the statue of Hans Christian Andersen. You saw the statue the other day. That night he wrote a letter to Bertha von Suttner. Bertha von Suttner was an Austrian countess who had worked for him for a very brief time, but stayed a lifelong friend, and she herself would win the Nobel Peace Prize in 1905. He's writing a letter to Bertha von Suttner, and he's beginning to express his thoughts about his legacy and about how he could best use his great wealth. So he laid out what he wanted to do, when, and how, and that would become the foundation of his will. And he wrote that his legacy was to promote peace and science, and he was to carry this out with his sizable fortune. He was a very highly educated man, tutored as a child in St. Petersburg, and fluent in Swedish, French, Russian, English, German, and Italian. From the age of 9 to about the age of 30, this Swedish family was in St. Petersburg, where they had moved after his father had experienced some business failures. The family then moved back to Sweden. And at that time, he got into a bitter argument with his father about which of them had really invented dynamite. So they're squabbling about this because the father and son were both working with the same elements that would later become known as dynamite. So his father backed off, and Alfred got a patent for what was originally called blasting oil. Blasting oil. So the Nobel Peace Prize is given in Oslo City Hall, presented by the chairman of the Nobel Peace Committee, with the Norwegian royal family in attendance. The Peace Laureate is housed here. It's the lovely Grand Hotel in Oslo. There is also a lovely Grand Hotel in Stockholm. And this is where the Peace Prize banquet is held. The laureates stay there. The most famous non-winner of the Peace Prize is probably Gandhi of India. And he was nominated in 1937, 1938, 1939, 1947, and finally, shortly before he was assassinated in January of 1948. Gandhi was not awarded the prize. And this was at a time when the criterion was that no posthumous awards were permitted under the statutes. No posthumous awards were permitted. And the Norwegian Nobel Committee decided to make no award that year on the grounds that there was no suitable living candidate. They skipped the Peace Prize in the year that Gandhi died. Now, his most famous disciple, Martin Luther King Jr., a fellow practitioner of nonviolence, would go on to win it in 1964. Other famous peace nominees: Hitler was nominated by a member of the Swedish parliament in 1939. Can you imagine Hitler being nominated for a Peace Prize in 1939? The gentleman who nominated him, a member of the Swedish parliament, immediately saw the error of his ways and withdrew the nomination very quickly. Stalin was nominated twice in 1945 and 1948 for his efforts in ending World War II.